Welcome to the first in our year-round series of virtual panels in the Global Packaging Innovation Forum. We've launched this forum as a space in which we can dissect the latest advances in packaging technology and reflect on the wider trends and challenges driving innovation. And today we'll be focusing on the challenges and the opportunities around secondary and tertiary packaging. So we're just getting started with the Global Packaging Innovation Forum, but we've already had 600 professionals signing up to the community. In case you haven't had a chance to check out the platform itself yet, it's intended not just as a place to consume content, but for FMCG and packaging professionals to share ideas and knowledge in an interactive way. So after today's session, I would encourage you to click on the Attendees tab on this website and browse the fellow members of this forum. You can then send meeting requests if you see opportunities for discussion and collaboration with them. We'd also love you to interact with us in today's panel discussion. So please use the chat function on the right of the screen that you're now looking at, and you can share your comments on the topic at hand, tell us when you agree or disagree with the speakers, and of course put forward your own questions to today's speakers, which we'll try to address at the end. So let's get started with today's panel. We're exploring today trends and pain points that are driving innovation in secondary and tertiary packaging. I would argue that we've never faced a more complex landscape when we consider the demands placed on aggregation, bundling, cartoning, and transit packaging. Clearly, sustainability is a truly urgent driver, but at the same time, we're seeing increasing complexity across the supply chains for various reasons. Fortunately, we have a panel of experts representing different corners of the value chain to help us navigate these thorny issues. So I'm delighted to introduce our three speakers today. First of all, we have Elizabeth Staab. She is Global Strategic Marketing Manager at the adhesive specialist HB Fuller. Secondly, Bernhard Vaihinger, who's a product manager at Syntegon, formerly Bosch Packaging Technology. And thirdly, Alan Potts, who is Design and Innovations Director at the leading corrugated supplier DS Smith. So let's briefly get to know our speakers and how their organizations are involved in secondary and tertiary packaging contexts. Elizabeth, I'd like to start with you. Perhaps some members of the audience would be curious why we have someone from the adhesives segment talking about this topic. Could you give us an idea of how the topic today impacts on your organization's role?
Yes, it would be my pleasure. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion. So HB Fuller is a leading global adhesive formulator and supplier, and we are present across the globe, and we see this request from many of our customers who say, how can they overall reduce the amount of packaging that they're using? And our adhesives are used to make the corrugated board or the folding cartons, as well as we use our adhesives to close the cases and cartons. We produce adhesives for labeling and also make reinforcement tapes for containers, as well as easy opening tapes. We also offer adhesives for flexible packaging, but there are various adhesive design options that we have been looking at lately more closely and have been very heavily engaged in when it comes to multi-pack bundling, in particular in the beverage area, where we have been working with various partners in order to launch new design areas. But there are also other industries where we are active. Of course, it's mainly food and beverage, but then also pharmaceutical or industrial, such as furniture and automotive, where our packaging adhesives are being used. And I'd argue that all of these industries are really looking at how they can optimize their packaging and use the least materials possible and those that suit their purposes best. So from an adhesive point of view, we're of course more often than not a very small component of the overall package, but I would argue that the adhesive has a great influence on how efficient a production process is, how it behaves in the supply chain, and then also has an impact on the recycling after use in terms of how well the primary material can then be recycled. I think that's where adhesives primarily come into use and play an important role. So I'm looking forward to today's discussion.
Thanks very much, Elizabeth. Alan, let's turn to you. I think it's pretty clear what DS Smith and corrugated has to do with this area of packaging. Could you tell us what's your role and how do the demands of secondary and tertiary packaging impact on your particular work?
Yeah, thanks, Tim, and welcome everybody. So for those that don't know us, DS Smith, we serve thousands of customers across a huge variety of categories, channels, and supply chains with fully recyclable, sustainable corrugated packaging solutions. We have what we call a circular business model, in that we're involved in the manufacture of those corrugated boxes, the manufacturing of paper for them, and also a leading position recycling across Europe and in North America. And sustainability is the top of many of our customers' agenda for sure when we look across those innovation pipelines. But sustainability is one of those words that has very different meanings to many of our customers. So when you break down the word into what's important for the different customers, that's when it gets complex, as you said at the beginning, very quickly. So kind of our role in that is to help our customers try and navigate through that complexity as best we can, giving them sort of clear metrics so they can make the decisions on what meets with their priorities.
Thanks very much, Alan. And indeed, we're going to be diving straight into some of these complexities in a minute. And Bernhard, last but not least, could you tell us about your role within Syntegon, and perhaps just summarizing the Syntegon portfolio areas that relate to today's discussion of secondary and tertiary packaging?
Yes, okay. Nice to be here, nice to participate. So my name is Bernhard Vaihinger, and I'm product manager at Syntegon for case packing, located in Remshalden, close to Stuttgart. So Syntegon is a company with more than 600 employees working at 32 sites all over the world, with a turnover volume of 1.3 billion euros, and we're active in food and pharma. So we have worldwide running about 64,000 machines worldwide, and the company looks back to about 50 years of experience. So in the area where I'm working, which is mainly the food, we have all the primary packaging, which is the vertical form, fill and seal machines, the horizontal form, fill and seal machines. Then we have the cartoning by top load, by side load, end load. We have sleeving, and then we have the tertiary packaging, which is the case packing, which is mainly my part, and also the complete line business. So by the way, the history from case packing Syntegon at Remshalden was in 1985. We developed a pack style we called at that time Elematic Combi Pack. And this was a case consisting of two parts, tray and hood, now very common as shelf-ready packaging, already retail packaging. This is a little bit of background. Also interesting is that we have a focus on several industries. So we try to be experts for industries like biscuit, bakery, chocolate, snacks, cereals, chilled, frozen food, also home and personal care, and also pet food.
Thank you, Bernhard. Thank you. So let's look at these broader characteristics of secondary and tertiary packaging landscape and demands. And in this question of the complexity of the demands that we have to face, obviously there are ever-present pressures such as cost, but it seems to me that the biggest disruptor currently and inevitably, which has already been brought up by Alan, is sustainability. In our sister brands, the Sustainable Packaging Summit series, we've been talking about this at great length, but rarely in the specific context of secondary and tertiary packaging. So I'd really like to hear your perspectives on how these demands are impacting in your area of business. like to start by saying, obviously, sustainability itself is multifaceted, and I think Alan already referred to this, and it's quite contested in its definition. You know, even looking at the basic question of priorities, are we talking about resource efficiency and by implication carbon reduction? Are we talking about recyclability and packaging waste reduction? Mm-hmm. Elizabeth, let's start by asking you about your perspective on the sustainability demands that you encounter from your customers around solutions for bundling, aggregation, etc. How do you see the definition of sustainability and the kinds of impacts that it has on your demands?
Thank you, Tim. I think, as you said, they are very versatile, and depending on the customer, those sustainability goals can be very different. At the same time, we do see common threads in that the process ought to be as efficient as possible so that assets that are already in place can be used as efficiently as possible. At the same time, as little material as possible should be used, as long as, of course, that being packaged is still safely packaged and fulfills its use and is attractive to us consumers on the supermarket shelf. And then, of course, the area where it then gets tricky is, are we looking at carbon footprint reduction? Are we looking at life cycle analyses? That's where then some of the goals can be a little bit different. And I think over the past few years, we've seen a very strong trend towards getting rid of plastic material. And I want to say provocatively a little bit, no matter what. And I do think that that is being scaled back to a certain degree, that one looks at it a little bit more holistically and says, I want to look at the carbon footprint overall. I want to look at the life cycle analysis overall, and not just get rid of plastic at all cost. We have seen in the various projects where we have been heavily engaged with customers looking at what options they have. We have developed what we call the sustainability ladder, where we say, it's difficult to find the optimal packaging and start doing that as of tomorrow. It's really a development and a step-by-step process, and there are various levers that customers can have, whether that is using of course, from an adhesive perspective, using the most efficient adhesive as much as possible, making more boxes, closing more boxes, putting more labels on with as little adhesive possible, of course, with as little energy as possible. So we have low application temperature adhesives, for example. Now you might say that's not going to turn the wheel, but I would argue every little bit counts. And that's also where we are looking at the multi-pack bundling. So we have been working with partners such as KHS or with GPI in order to have these multi-pack bundling solutions that use very little or very much less packaging material than on the shelf. But of course, then there's the next step. It's on a tray, it's in a box, and how do those all come together? So from an adhesive perspective, as I already said at the beginning, it is important that the adhesive makes the process as efficient as possible so that things can run as smoothly as possible during the production, and then also once the material has been collected again, so that the recycling can be as efficient as possible, whether that's a carton board, whether that's a PET bottle, whether that's a glass bottle. So that's then where the recycling is very important from our point of view. That's really the areas where adhesives can really play a very important role to enable the functionality of that primary material. So I'd say that's.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yes. Yeah, that's a great introduction. Alan, I'd like to ask you as well about the kinds of trade-offs and the priorities that drive those trade-offs when we're thinking about sustainability and how that impacts on product development.
Yeah, sure. As I said, when I look across the innovation agendas of our key customers, then sustainability as well as cost and efficiency is certainly there for most of them. And as I said, it means different things to different customers. So if we take our kind of FMCG customers, as Elizabeth was just saying, there's been a real focus of single-use plastic reduction. And many of our customers have set their own targets for single-use plastic reduction. So there's been a heavy focus on that for some time in FMCG. Perhaps as COP26 approaches, then the carbon commitments, I think, as Elizabeth then said, I think CO2 could come back on the agenda for that. And we are starting to see some of that in the mix. So when we look at that and the complexity and the complex landscape that we were talking about, if we look at then the metrics of recyclability, renewable sources for materials, compostability, biodegradability, and then CO2, then some of those conflict with one another. So if you go for CO2 as your number one priority, then that's where you get the plastics. If you look at renewable resources, if that's your main priority, then what does that do to the CO2 footprint? So as a packaging supplier, I think our job is to give our customers as clear data as we possibly can in this complex area. Give them a rating against each of these metrics, so they can then take their decisions based on their own priorities. Because there's no clear right and wrong. It's where your priorities are, customers' priority as a business is. So that's where we're at, really. A complex agenda. Different customers have different priorities as they move along and may change, and we've got to accommodate them all and working hard to supply some metrics to enable them to do that.
Thanks, Alan. And Bernhard, I'd like to turn to you. And so from a machinery point of view, how do you detect the precise demands that customers are bringing to you? What are their priorities? Is it around switching to different packaging materials or formats? Is it looking at a greater emphasis on energy reduction throughout the product line? How does your perspective, what does it tell us about the definition of sustainability?
So when we look to secondary packaging, I think the biggest driver is no plastic. So everybody develops to replace plastic trays inside cartons to be replaced by paper-based trays or paper trays or whatever. Also, it's a strong vision to go to monomaterials or to paper. So if it looks like paper, it's fine. So it's a little bit, I think, critical, because you need sometimes some coatings to get it tight and to get enough shelf life. But anyway, everything has to look like paper. This is one thing in secondary. In tertiary, we are working already in Europe with a huge quantity of recycled material. And recycled material is good, okay, but the problem is, for the machines, the blank quality is sometimes that they are bended. And so this means that the packaging machines need to be more tolerant to work with bended blanks. And this was a development we made in the past to give more tolerance to the machines, to reduce the waste, because bad blanks you have to throw away. So this is one of our sustainable developments. The machines are more tolerant. Also, the machines need to be prepared to work with alternative materials like grass paper-based, corrugated, or coconut paper. There are some developments going on, and I think the packaging machines need to be able to run with it. Other point where we're working on is we try to reduce the hot melt quantity we need by going from ropes to dots. So this is a nice development to make the complete case, which is consisting of corrugated and glue, more sustainable. Also, there are some ideas to move away from gluing, but with ultrasonic, but this is difficult because you have a very limited range of cases you can produce. You can only produce a trace, you cannot close a case. So this is something, and on the machine side, we are driven to grant the minimum energy consumptions for the machines, but this is already more or less expected by the customers. So we use the energy when the machine is braking to use for acceleration and so on. So we try to replace pneumatics against electric actuators and so on. But I think this is a small impact. I think the big impact is really the no plastic and the more tolerance to work with blanks. And also I think the hot melt to reduce quantity of hot melt is also one of the points.
Thanks, Bernhard. So I think one of the things that we've already seen is, even if we're talking about sustainability, there's a huge amount of complexity, a multiplicity of different variables, different strategic directions you can take in sustainability. And it strikes me that one of the ways that we can approach this is through more integrated collaboration between organizations like yours in bringing sustainable solutions faster to the market by working together. Do any of you have any thoughts about the importance of that?
Yeah, from our perspective, the collaboration and insights over the total supply chain has been important, but becomes even more so now. I think we join in with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation with the view of the transition to the circular economy and what DS Smith's role can be in that. And part of what they look at is, there's only so much you can do at product design level. You have to shift yourself up to system level, as their words are. And that is more relevant today than it's ever been, really, with all this complexity. It's shifting up. And if we are going to design for reuse or reuse alternatives or return alternatives, if we are going to look at LCAs and supply chain carbon footprints, then that is a system level. That is collaborating with stakeholders for sure.
Elizabeth, I
yes,
believe.
I would absolutely agree. I mean, the gentleman here from DS Smith and Syntegon, we've had development collaboration in the past and ongoing. So I think that's a very good example of how industries work together. And I think the latest examples of some of the industry innovations that have come on market for the beverage area, for example, were only possible through collaboration of various parties. And I'd argue it's not only 2, but it's 3 or 4 parties, which makes project management a bit challenging at times. But I think that's how we are really able to achieve those very good results and have very much better ideas and solutions than I would say any of us would do on their own.
Thank you. So let's broaden the discussion a little bit further. So as well as meeting sustainability demands, as we've just been discussing, the marketplace is becoming ever more complex around secondary and tertiary packaging. We're seeing an increasing variety in the retail channels, in bricks and mortar store formats. We're dealing with the rise of e-commerce and completely different supply chains and demands that are associated with e-commerce. If we look at brand owners, there's a proliferation in the number of SKUs compared to a decade ago, and a general direction of travel towards greater customization. How do these pressures impact on our innovation strategies and those that we need to grasp in the future? And also, how do they impact on our ability to deliver sustainability, as we've just been discussing? Alan, could you give your thoughts on how you view these challenges and their overall impact?
Yeah, huge impact, I'd say. I think, if we look at a lot of our major customers, they've built factories and infrastructure and logistics around producing, fantastic, consistent quality products at very high efficiency. for sure. And I think what's happened with this retail format complexity, we've got hard discounters and small stores, very small stores, garage, forecourts, e-com, as you said, a lot more customization with free from and different ingredients and stuff. So the complexity has grown exponentially, I think, over the last few years. And some of them have struggled because they've got infrastructure and manufacturing, as I said, to do high volume at low cost and good quality. So, I think they've started to see generally, co-packing, increasing significantly over time, which is a cost burden and an environmental challenge, I would say as well. So it's a huge topic for our major customers. How do they manage within this increasing SKU complexity with short lead times, whilst managing the cost efficiency and sustainability agenda? And it all comes back to agility at end of line and systems that give flexibility and agility at the end of line.
Bernhard, would you like to elaborate on that? How do you see these impacts?
Yes, it's really a very, very big impact, and so we are very driven by these developments. So one of these big drivers is the smaller case count. So this is we have been facing in the United States, but also in Europe, and this has a big impact on packaging machines because they have to get faster. Because the primary packaging machines, they don't get slower. If you reduce case count, the machine has to get faster. So this is really a very strong field for new developments. Also, a new thing is that new shelf depths are coming up, started in the United States with Walmart. Now we've also in Germany big retailers asking for new shelf depth to load 2 trays behind each other into the shelf depth, which makes the cases shorter, less depth, and this also reduces the case count. This reduces the phasing. So from formerly 1 or 2 phasing, we are now faced with pack styles with 3 or 4 products phasing. So it's a big impact on the machines. Then the easy opening, I think it's old, but it's still hot. Also, everybody wants to have very big display windows without ripped edges, that it looks nice. Also, the ISO module fit is on for perfect pallet utilization is very important, and we sometimes we fight about millimeters to find a solution to get the product into the case with the right dimension according to the ISO module. Other thing coming up now is finger protection. So when consumers take out the product from the case in the discounter shop, they may get injured by the corrugated, and so we are faced with pack styles with fold overs, so with nice looking undangerous shape edges. Then the flexibility of pack styles is growing a lot. So to serve different markets, customers expect different pack styles, and please all to be done on one machine. So this is really a big impact. We see that the number of formats a machine has to run is growing a lot. So when we formerly had machines with 2, 3, 4 formats, we have now several machines with 5, 6, even 15 and more formats on the same machine. And also customers want to run different products on the same machine, and different products behave different. So this is a really big challenge to have such flexible and tolerant machines to cope with different pack styles, different formats, product, and fast format changeover, because the skill of people operating the machine is not so good as it should be or as we would like it. So the machines have to be more or less self-explaining and really very easy to change over with vertical restart after changeover.
Thank you, and that's really a picture of the complexity and the variety of demands that we have to face today, isn't it? That's a great snapshot. Thank you, Bernhard. Elizabeth, how do you see the combination of meeting sustainability and demands and optimization across all of these complex areas, and how does that impact on the adhesives area?
I'd say the issues that Alan and Bernhard mentioned here, the adhesive is in the lucky situation that more often than not one adhesive adheres to various different substrates. But in turn, that also means when we're looking at our product development that we need to have adhesives that are as versatile as possible. And then when it comes to line stoppages for changeover, that there's no issue with the adhesive sitting there, whether that's the hot melt tank, whether that is water-based adhesives for side seaming, carton making, or also for labeling. So those are aspects that we look at very closely when we develop our products. So really that we can, one of the propositions we like to make to our customer is that our products are so versatile that they can then reduce their SKUs and hopefully only need one adhesive per technology category in order to satisfy their needs in an individual plant. And on that side, at least, make their lives a bit easier.
But
so that's really when one looks at, pardon?
May I add something?
Yes,
certainly.
please.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. And this is also very important that hot melt technology follows the trends, because customers do not accept different hot melt types for case packing. They say this is our glue for cartoning or for case packing or for whatever, and you have to live with it. So formerly they accepted several different types. That's gone this time. So it's a big challenge, I understand, for you.
No, absolutely. And adding on to that, I think we see currently the grades of the carton also changing quickly. I think in the current situation where raw materials are scarce and paper board manufacturers are sourcing fibers farther afield, we do see more differences in the cartons and the cardboards. And again, that poses a true challenge in particular for hot melt adhesives in order to give reliable results every time with different formats, with different paper and corrugated grades. And that's really where the continuous development and again, communication between industry partners is particularly important to understand those changes. So that together we can all make the lives of our customers easier, because the solution overall continues to work even though small details are being changed.
Yeah. I'd like to talk specifically about e-commerce, which we've alluded to briefly in the discussion, but it strikes me as a situation where we've spent decades optimizing supply chains, and then e-commerce comes along and explodes all of those paradigms that we've put so much effort into refining over the years around protection and resource efficiency. Alan, obviously e-commerce is very central to your markets. Can you comment on this challenge and the complexities that you have to address?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as we all know, e-commerce has grown exponentially, and even more so over the last 12 months. And the studies that we do saying consumers are going to carry on at that level of e-commerce activity. So, it's here to stay. And as you referred to, we've had, or certainly I've had years and years and years of experience in traditional retail formats, where performance requirements are normally sort of top down on a box compression testing. And when we look at e-commerce supply chains, then they're just so different. The number of touch points, manual touch points you'd get in an e-commerce supply cycle, the whole variety of different final mile delivery situations. We're seeing new products coming into the e-commerce channel as it's grown, into chilled and even frozen at some stage. And on top of all that, it's a lot of it is in low states of maturity. So we've kind of got this model of where our customers are, and at the first stage, it's kind of what we call adapted. So e-commerce is small and it's new, so they kind of use existing packaging materials, but then add something to it. So they'll wrap it a few times in whatever, or they'll take a more manual approach to that. And as the volumes grow, they then look at more specialized e-commerce packaging formats to enable them to do that. But of course, then that adds to this SKU complexity that we were talking about before. So you then moved on to this kind of omni-channel nirvana, where one packaging SKU can be good enough for all retail channels. And okay, that may be some way off, but there's a lot we can do in terms of steps along the way for that, and having packaging formats that are suitable for both retail and omni-channel, and different types of retail as well. So there's a lot of activity around that omni-channel, I would say.
Thank you. Yeah, I've in discussions around optimizing e-commerce packaging over the years, I've often found that one of the most paradoxical challenges you face is that the more you optimize the cube efficiency of an individual pack, the more complicated it becomes with a whole load in transit, because you're going to have more variety in shapes and sizes. Do you have any thoughts about how we find the sweet spot in terms of achieving the greatest efficiency?
Well, I think it's case count has a lot to do with it, or traded units, if you like. And if when our customers have decided, across the business, that the econ traded unit is going to be the same as a multiple on a shelf, for instance, at least then you can have common sizes, and you can look at developing packaging specifications that at least the same footprint, and you can add in perforations or not add in perforations depending on which route it's going to go down. So there's some good progress being made in that sense.
Thank you. And to what extent is e-commerce driving innovation for the machinery side, Bernhard?
I think the impact in e-commerce for case packing machines is at the moment not so big as we had before when we talked about the point of sale, because our customers, they produce the products and then they are shipped to warehouses, to retailers, but the e-commerce business is not already had not come to our customers. So when we talk with our customers, what are your ideas with e-commerce? They are not quite sure, because we are mainly supplying the food industry, and food industry is at the moment not in focus of e-commerce. But of course, we have some customers, they are involved in the B2C business. And so they are thinking about how need we to change our pack styles to ship the product directly from the production factory to the end customer. And this is our involvement, where we think about how can we make cases more solid, because when they are transported on a truck, they get vertical stacking strengths on the pallet. But if they are shipped by UPS or DHL or whoever, they are stressed by falling down, thrown away. They get from three sides stress, and the standard pack styles are not prepared for this. So this is the area where we are involved. And also we get sometimes from customers inquiries that we have to consider Amazon's SIOC or FFP, so filtration-free packaging, demands, and so we have to prepare to make tests to grant the stability. But this is also needs to be done in strong cooperation with corrugated suppliers, because we build only the machines, but the design of the textile is mostly a job of the corrugated suppliers or also from the customer themselves. But the machines have to be able that they need to handle also this maybe modified blank styles.
Yeah, just building on that Bernhard was saying, we're seeing a big growth in what we call direct to consumer, as you were saying. And that's been coped with through sending product out to be repacked into e-commerce packaging.
Yeah.
But as the levels grow, then that isn't meeting the cost and efficiency targets of our customers. So quite how they can integrate e-com packaging and end of line packaging in the factories is a big issue. Yeah. We developed. Because the performance requirements in e-commerce are so different, and if you've been in a fulfillment center, late at night or early in the morning, and you see how some of the packages are handled through that, then it's so different than 12 bottles in a pack on a pallet, for sure. So we developed a different set of testing around sort of drop and shake and whatever. Because we was just so focused on top-down compression and things you learn about where you can't use perforations and side impact damage. It's a whole new way of looking at performance requirements through the e-com channel, for sure.
Yeah, so also we learned that customers are thinking about to change their products to fit better to the e-commerce shipment. For example, if you take, let's say, a bottle with detergent liquid, it's difficult to protect a bottle against damages if it's very hardly stressed. And so they think about to change from a liquid to a concentrate or to instant powder. So you buy a bag or a pouch. Inside you have something like powder, and at home you add water. So this is also one reaction which happens now on the primary packaging side to fit better to the e-commerce.
Yeah, that's a great example of the joined up thinking that we've been talking about, isn't it? That we don't look at secondary and tertiary packaging in isolation, but it's a constant dialogue between each of these different layers.
Just to add one point on to the e-commerce packaging. At HB Fuller, we work with various partners when it comes to e-commerce, and I'd say there's one area where we have been working quite a bit with other machine suppliers, looking at the pack to size, really the optimal size for each package, then for the e-tailers that are picking and packing early in the morning and late at night, to have that ideal size, and they have really developed some very high-tech machines to be able to measure the exact amount, weight, and then also shape of what needs to go into that box, and then customize each individual box. And we're happy to say that there are hot melt solutions for that one as well. The other area, of course, is, and I think we've all seen that at home when we get something that we've ordered online, is first of all, and I think that's becoming less and less, but the amount of air that we are receiving with every shipment, depending on what is in the package, is sometimes rather extraordinary. But then if something needs to be sent back, does one then have to use a separate package, or is the e-tailer, I'd say, up to date in terms of the packaging possibilities that they are with that currently exist with regards to, do they have an easy opening tape? Do they then have a reclose tape? Those types of packaging features, I think, for the e-commerce experience for the consumer, where they will then say, yes, I'm going to order from that e-tailer again, or rather not, because I did not like the packaging. I didn't think the packaging was sustainable. It was fussy packaging. I received too much air. Those are all considerations that one needs to look at when deciding what type of packaging you're going to be using in e-commerce.
Yeah, but again, that's just building on that. That's another good point. I mean, we're used to having 10 or 12 or 15 of the same products in a box that get shipped on a pallet, where some of our e-com customers will have thousands of different SKUs and an average basket size of 3. So if you were to hold a box size for every one of those combinations, there would be billions of box sizes. And of course, consumers want it all this afternoon or tomorrow. So then that presents difficulties that we see with air and stuff. So for us, the number one is protection. The costs of return and damage in e-com are even more than in traditional retail, probably. So number one is damage protection. But we're also innovating around variable pack sizes that you can do from a product level. And as Elizabeth said, we've been experimenting in kind of right size packaging and systems that can measure the size required and cut the board to shape. In my 30 years or something in this industry, for 28 of those, no one ever wanted to talk about corrugated packaging in my social circles anyway, but certainly for the last 2, we're big time on the agenda with the rise in e-com. And it's exciting. There's a lot we can do, and there's a lot of innovation we can do on these topics for me.
Thanks, Alan. And so before we turn to questions from the audience, I'd like to zoom in slightly from these big high-level strategic challenges that we've been discussing to thinking about specific technological choices and what's on the innovation horizon. Let's maybe start by considering the secondary packaging areas, contexts such as bundling and cartoning and multi-packs. Are there any thoughts you have of interesting areas of new technology or things in your innovation pipeline that you would like to highlight that can help address the sustainability and complexity challenges that we face at the moment? Elizabeth, any thoughts there?
Yes, I think it is absolutely crucial that, sort of as Alan was saying, that our customers have as many options as possible to choose from so that they can make the best possible selection that is the most appropriate for the item that they are packing and selling. Just because there are so many different contents, and in our previous discussion, we all came to the joint conclusion that there is no right solution. There's depending on each company's priorities and possibilities, there's the best possible option. So it's really about offering more possibilities of how to pack. So from an adhesive point of view, there are various options of what can be done in terms of saving adhesives, but also in terms of using adhesives in a different way. So when we're thinking of a pallet, instead of using, you can reduce the overall amount of packaging materials if you glue the boxes together temporarily while they are in the supply chain. So that, for example, is an option that we are looking at very carefully with many of our customers, because they're looking holistically at the packaging from when it leaves their plant to when it goes to the supermarket's loading bay and then on the shelf. So everything that makes that process easier, reduces packaging materials, reduces the carbon footprint, and improves the life cycle analysis, of course, is an area that customers are looking at. So we are looking at other bundling solutions, not only the multi-packs that I already mentioned, but various tape solutions of how a few boxes can be taped together to give more inherent stability to a pallet. So those are different options that we are looking at, as well as developments into adhesives, whether that is hot melt or water-based or other technology that may be bio-based or also compostable. So those are areas, again, just to offer customers as many choices as possible so that they can make the best selection and the best choice for their goals, for their sustainability goals. I think in the supply chain, in particular as an adhesive supplier, as we are a small component of the overall package, we ought to be able to open all of those avenues and give those possibilities to customers so that they can make their choice and support them in doing that. So we've seen over the last couple of years, and it is increasing, really that cooperation with various industry partners. And I think that plays a great role as well. One is the actual solution and saying, we have this technology, this is what you can do with it, but also the ideas and the cooperation with machine suppliers, with corrugated suppliers, and various other co-suppliers in the industry, whether that's printers or other suppliers. That is really where we can have better solutions going forward for our customers and the industry as a whole. So
Thanks,
thank
Elizabeth.
you.
Thank you. As a neutral observer of the packaging industry over the last few years, it's been very interesting to see, for example, in the multi-pack context that you've alluded to, the different options that have emerged in terms of offering sustainability, and so for example we've seen numerous versions of the using glue rather than packaging to aggregate cans, and we've also seen in the corrugated sector, perhaps it's an innovation, but it's also harking back to earlier popular formats in bringing back corrugated as an alternative to plastic, and I guess that speaks to the point that we had earlier about the variety of priorities and options when we think about sustainability. Alan, where do you see where's your view of the most exciting things in the innovation pipeline when we think about this whole landscape?
Yeah, I mean, on what Elizabeth was saying, then I think the multi-pack, adding an additional layer of packaging to sell at a discounted price. I'm not sure how attractive that will be going forward. We're seeing a drive to go from shrink wrap to fiber of some sorts, and from plastics to fiber in kind of aggregation and bundling. We're seeing, as Bert was saying earlier, that there's kind of bioplastics alternatives out there, but there's still some confusion about the recycling and the impact of recycling on that. So fibers, consumers generally know what to do with corrugated or with fiber. So, but that presents us with some challenges as a packaging company, and it comes back to this point we talked about before about system level, about partnering. That we can't go to one of our customers with a corrugated only product. It's got to have a machine system to be able to pack it efficiently at scale, or to fit down existing machine systems at scale. We see tremendous opportunity with robotics for sure, which has advanced tremendously, and Bernhard would probably talk about that for flexibility and agility end of line, and also IoT, Internet of Things. So there's now ability to kind of make the kind of product of one box of one, in intelligent machine packing. There's some really exciting things happening on that as well, I'd say.
Thanks, Alan. And Bernhard, before we go over to the questions from the audience, then I will give you the final word on where do you see the innovation pipeline leading us to?
I think, and this was said before several times, moving away from plastic, so in cartoning and everywhere where it's possible, plastic will be removed and replaced by some paper-based materials, also multi-packs. So formerly there had been plastic foil, shrinking, whatever, all the stuff with foil. I think this will be and can be replaced by multi-packs, for example, by paper sleeves could be a solution. I think also other new solutions will come up, as mentioned before from Elizabeth, which is also, I think, very interesting. And also to the former shrink wrapping, to have a tray filled with cans or whatever, and then shrink wrap. I think also for this solutions need to be found, for example, with a paper hood, a paper lid. So in this direction, I see a lot of area for new developments.
Thank you, everyone. Right, well, we've had, as usual, quite a lot of engagement from our audience. So I'm going to give them the floor now and give them the opportunity to ask some questions. So we've had quite a lot of interest in the question of automation, actually, and which we've just sort of touched on at the end, but we've got space to elaborate on this a bit more. So first of all, a question from Sandeep Shenoy. What are the innovations foreseen in automation and controls of secondary and tertiary packaging machinery? And a follow-up question, how are machine builders adapting themselves to the new digital world? So I guess this has to be a question for Bernhard to start off with.
Yes, of course. So we have really many people involved in all the development of the new things in electronic, in connecting machines. So we have really special people only working in this field, also to work on HMIs, self-explainable, to track all the data, to find systems to get the data for servicing, to embed also videos to show people how to operate if they have a problem. So in this direction.
Okay, thank you. Alan, Elizabeth, anything you'd like to add on the Industry 4.0 or smart machinery side of things and how that's impacting?
Yeah, I think just from my perspective, it's about opportunity in that space. But if we were talking about a complex landscape, we suddenly bring in IT infrastructure at our customers and compatibility externally as well, then that's a huge other complex landscape that we've got in there. And how you manage the big data and who owns that data are some of the big questions that we're that are only just beginning to consider. I think, and as I said before, robotics. I think that technology drive there from certain customers, certain vendors across the world is amazing. What this robotics can do for us in packaging.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think when it comes to that type of data, we've been running various trials with getting data on adhesives in terms of application weight, to be able to use that in an indicative way for quality control. That's of course still far away from Industry 4.0, where ideally everything is integrated and you can look at everything on your smartphone or on a Padlet. But we have done various tests of aggregating data and really seeing adhesive application as a quality control tool, and being able to say, as if the adhesive is adhered properly, then your label is on properly, your box is closed, etc., and that's then indicative for quality control. Of course, a very small aspect of Industry 4.0 overall, but as Alan was saying, I think there's a huge investment necessary in order to integrate everything and retrofit. I think if it's greenfield, it's fairly straightforward, but retrofitting and having all the systems talk to one another is quite a challenge.
Thank you. So we have another question that kind of relates to automation, but more specifically about filling centers, fulfillment centers for e-commerce, and also things like the shipping with drones and robots in the last mile of e-commerce. The question is, do the panelists already see an impact of these trends on packaging demands, and what kind of demands on packaging itself do you foresee from that level of enhanced automation?
Well, from my perspective, I still have a bet with somebody that I wouldn't see a drone delivery at my house in my working time. So I don't know so much. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great stories on drones, and you can definitely see their application in certain countries, in certain markets, or for certain product situations. But I think it's some way off in terms of mass delivery to towns and cities, and then you consider apartment blocks and things. So not so much on drones. But we see, as I said, the final mile differentiation that we're getting. So where you collect your parcel from, and there are different features of packaging that can help with that. If you're picking it up from a locker box, you can quite often see somebody wanting to check the product at a locker box, so they remove the secondary or the tertiary packaging and look for somewhere to put it and take the primary pack home, or it's not right, so they want to pack it immediately and put it back in the locker box for collections and stuff. So I think all that is driving change, and whilst e-com was lower percentages of a customer's total output, then it was kind of a far off, but now it's such a big percentage, and consumers are so conscious of environmental sustainability considerations. I think it's got to be much more of a driver, and I think that's the driving point, not the machine systems. The machine systems are there to do it as efficiently as possible. The driver isn't machine systems; the driver is the endpoint functionality required, I think.
Yeah. Back on the question of drones, we profiled a leading Chinese e-tailer, JD, I think already 3 or 4 years ago, and they were using drones particularly for remote areas where in a city it doesn't make sense, but in parts of China it's very, very depopulated, maybe difficult topography. So I think my comment there would be that possibly Europe isn't the place to look. We're used to patting ourselves on the back as the cutting edge, but in some areas of the new digital economy, I think we should be looking at the Far East of Asia as really the pioneers. Okay, let's take another question, and we have several that are homing in on the sustainability topics that we had, and we have a question from Gary Buchhalter, which is, I suppose, challenging the panelists on one of the premises of the question that we answered. So we were talking about the importance of being able to respond to the priorities of different customers, and having an option, a mix of solutions for different priorities in terms of sustainability. Gary has said, should we just be responding to customer requests, or should we be working with customers to truly understand the impact of various packaging solutions on the planet? So yeah, I mean, sometimes customers are wrong, aren't they? And sometimes their perception of greenwashing is the right thing. Is the business the right business choice, and not necessarily the right sustainability choice. Do we think that there's a trend towards having more substantive discussions with customers? I suppose it could be another way of framing that question.
I'd like to have the first go at that one. I think overall for many people in the industry, parts of the sustainability agenda and the requirements coming from legal frameworks are all still very much a learning experience. And speaking from the various materials that I have prepared with my colleagues for customer conversations, we have had a whole section in there of explaining terms and what is the difference between recycling and composting and industrial composting versus home composting, and what do the different standards mean. I would argue there is still a lot of learning necessary in the industry and understanding what each of different goals mean and in what direction that's going to take you. I mean, I think there are some companies that are very well aware and have great experts amongst their teams going in that direction, and really building a strategy, knowing exactly what they want and what they need. But I would argue there are many other companies that don't necessarily know that yet. And there is that room for conversation, and we definitely have those conversations with customers to say, well, what are the differences? What are the advantages? To then finally have the big question of, well, what is it that you actually really want and that you are going for? So I do think it is a journey, and some are further along than others. Absolutely. But again, it's about then offering choices. Once you've had that conversation, well, what is it that you actually want? Then nonetheless, you still want to be able to offer different choices once the customer has come to that conclusion, also in working together with various suppliers for them in their packaging space. Then once they have come to that conclusion, you want to be able to offer those solutions.
Yes, I fully agree. So we see also that customers, they get a target by law or whatever, or they set their own targets, but they do not exactly know how to fulfill. And I think this is really a point where you or we or everybody can work as a consultant and show possible solutions that they can reach the targets. And I think there's really a high demand of working together with the customers, and also to develop by yourself own solutions and show to customers and discuss. So I think a good dialogue is really necessary.
Yeah, it's a good question from Gary, I guess. I think the issue is that there are the type of things I was talking about before, aren't so black and white, where there's no clear right or clear wrong packaging solution. So if we're talking about recyclable, then we've got our target of 100% of our manufactured product will be recyclable by 2023, and we're kind of 98.5% of the way there, and we're trying to tackle the 1.5. So our statement is 100%. So we won't be producing anything that falls outside of that target. So that would be a hard rule for us. But a lot of our packaging solutions aren't as black and white as that. As I said before, it could be that something is from 100% renewable resources, which may be a key priority for a customer. But in terms of the LCA, in terms of the carbon footprint, there may be a better solution that's from fossil fuel or whatever. And we're not in a position to be able to say the customer's wrong in thinking that or whatever. All we can do is give the different options and the metrics behind each one.
And I suppose as a whole, we can all play a role in the broader goal of harmonization and having high-level discussions about what's the most effective sustainability approach for the industry, and pushing for the adoption of common standards and methodologies.
Yeah, but again, common is these areas. It's very difficult to be generic. If we look at return systems, is return better than single trip? Then yes and no. It depends on the specific situation. The distance between return, You know, if it's air freight, if it's rail, if it's land, if it's sea, you know, there are a whole different set of assumptions and calculations you have to make for an LCA. So these generic plastics good, fiber bad, or the other way around, single use versus multi-trip, are almost nonsense at a top level. It's all about in specific circumstances, and that's where you need the customer insight, the data on the supply chain conditions, and you need the collaboration as well.
Yes, I guess I would say that where you need harmonization is perhaps in the methodology and the benchmarking, so that you can make those judgments about context-specific, appropriate, sustainable choices as objectively as possible. Okay, great. Well, we're fast running out of time, and there's a couple of questions that I would like to put to you. In fact, these have been specifically addressed to two of the speakers. So first of all, Alan, we have a question here. Is there any possibility that a printed board used to collate 6 cans of drink could have a lower impact on the planet than an unprinted clear collation shrink film that uses PCR and is easily recycled? So that's speaking to the very issue that we've just been talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that is specific, isn't it? on the thing. Look, I think, I mean, I'm clearly not going to answer yes or no to that, because it's what I've just said. You know, you have to look at the specific situations. I think I stick to a point of having no generic yes or no to those kind of situations. You know, and my company's in fiber completely, but you know, we've got to have a balanced opinion on these kind of things, and our ambition is to have the metrics and individual circumstances, and let our customers decide on which one to go.
Thank you. And so a final question. This one is for Bernhard. The question reads as follows. You mentioned that in secondary packaging, there is a shift towards paper and board. On the other hand, for tertiary, there have been some shifts towards plastic, for example, with meat and fish due to higher hygiene standards. Do you believe this trend will continue and expand into other product categories?
If it was understood as a trend to plastic, it's not wrong. And not right. So I think also in tertiary, the trend is strongly to go to recycled materials, recycled corrugated, and idea is also to use more often, so to have more recycling cycles. I think the trend to plastic, I don't know where this comes from exactly, to be honest. I think if you, for example, have products like thermoforms with sausage or cheese inside, I think this will stay still in plastic and also in plastic foil. But I think the total amount of using plastic in tertiary goes also back, and also it goes back completely in regards of shrink wrapping foil. So also this will be replaced as far as possible with corrugated or solid board lids or hoods. So I think that maybe there was something unclear, but
yes, I think the questioner wasn't misinterpreting you, but was suggesting that within sort of hygiene specific applications that there was trends. But okay, yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. So I'm afraid that's all we're going to get through today. And just before we finish, I have a few final announcements. So first of all, we've spent a lot of time talking about sustainability today. So it would be remiss of me to go without mentioning the Sustainability Awards. This is the leading global competition for sustainable packaging innovation. The 2021 edition is currently open for submissions, but only for a few more days. So if any of our listeners or indeed any of our speakers have important sustainable packaging initiatives or innovation projects, we would love you to enter before the deadline of the 24th of March. So that's next Thursday. Mm-hmm. So details can be found at thesustainabilityawards.com, or you can find it via any of the Packaging Europe channels. We'll be back soon again with another Global Packaging Innovation Forum discussion. Upcoming topics include innovation in paper packaging and a deep dive into e-commerce, going even deeper than we have today. We'll be adding more and more exclusive content and innovation updates for our community members throughout the year. So do keep coming back to the platform. And of course, you can also, as I said at the start, network with fellow members of the community through the attendees link, and you can watch any of the previous panel discussions like today's one just on demand anytime through the platform. That's all for now. Thanks very much for engaging with today's discussion, and a special thanks to our panelists, Elizabeth, Bernhard, and Alan. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.